welcome back to the Ultimate Client Strategy Podcast. I'm Lisa Rosenthal, and this is my partner, Bruce Libman. And today we're joined by colleague and dear friend, Rob Fishman.
Great to be here, Lisa and Bruce.
And I'm going to take the pleasure of introducing Rob, all right, who is the president of Sandler Sales Training in Hop Hog, New York, all right. Some of the impact that Rob has, let me just read it off to you. He is always empowering sales leaders and their teams, and he increases revenue and profit through improved behaviors, mindsets, and systematic selling strategies. Now, that all sounds great, but I know Rob to be a lot more than that, all right, as the human being that he is. So, Rob, how are you?
Doing great, Bruce. And thank you for that illustrious welcome and kind words and all of that stuff. So I think we go back a few years at this point, don't we?
We do. You know, we did some work together every once in a while. All right.
I think what you guys are doing is fantastic work.
We had a lot of fun, too, when we did that work. We really did. All right. But it did get to a point when I was doing my thing, and I said, you know, I need help here because I got to bring Rob in to really waken these people up because they're sleeping on pillows listening to me. All right. So you did a great job as well.
Thank you, Bruce.
So let me ask you this.
Sure.
All right. I'm sure it's a long story, but how did you get into this business, this end of the business?
So great question, Bruce. So this is Rob version 3.0. Version 1.0 is in the music business, still playing music. Version 2.0 was owning a retail jewelry business for 30 plus years. So version 3.0 was when I was in that industry, I was part of a peer sharing group where we spent time working on marketing, our profit and loss statements, financials, merchandising, inventory, and I was with a peer group. And it was at that point that I realized there was a lot of focus on sales and sales development. I found myself always really enjoying that part of it. I am a little bit of an idiot savant when it comes to sales, that I've always been able to listen and hear what things could have been said versus what wasn't said. So at the conclusion of selling my retail businesses, I got into the Sandler business. So it's now 18 years. So I'm doing this. So this is version 3.0. I don't think this is going to be a 4.0. I think it's going to end at maybe 3.1.
But you also, in addition to all of that, Rob, I know and appreciate some of the work you do separate and apart from Sandler and your sales training. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of co-hosting events with you. And maybe you want to share a little bit about that part of the work you do.
Sure. So as we all have another side to us, you know, aside from the business world, is also from where we come from and what passions we have. And I think you're bringing up my mom and my history. So I sit as a vice chairman of the board of the Holocaust Memorial Intolerance Center of Nassau County. And I do that because of my family. My mother is a survivor. She was a hidden child. Lost her family in Auschwitz at the gas chambers and Hitler and Nazi Germany. So the work that we do is highly steeped in anti-Semitism, intolerance, and there seems to be a lot of it these days and even more. So the work we're doing is dedicated towards that area. So that's where I know, Lisa, you've been to many of our events over the years and supported it. So that's the other side besides the Sandler stuff and the music stuff, which is gratifying to be able to help.
So I've also been to your concerts. I've also sat and had a great meal listening to you play keyboards and
yeah, thank you for that.
Party trio, and you are incredibly talented. You contribute to the community in ways that make people joyful, and you impact people's lives through the arts. I went to a local play that you were the music director of. So I've watched so many of the different things you've done. Unfortunately, I haven't been to everything, but I've been to quite a few things. The work you do at Sandler impacts people's ability, right, to serve their own families and increase the quality of their lives. Mm-hmm. You impact people significantly professionally, not just out of your Hop Hog office, but with companies all over the world. I know you have clients that greatly appreciate the work you do and continue to bring you back over and over again. The work you do at the Holocaust Museum no doubt impacts our local community, but also impacts everybody around the world, particularly right now at a moment where everybody needs a little better insight. Everybody needs a little more kindness. Everybody needs to take a deep breath and show a little bit of respect for one another, regardless if they're Jewish, regardless of where they come from, what their race or religion is. Just a little more kindness towards each other would go a long way. So the work you do professionally and personally is incredibly impactful. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everything you do. It's been a joy, and I'm grateful to have participated in a lot of it. I want people to know what Sandler really does. More importantly, what you really do. Maybe you want to share a little bit of, maybe give a case example of the work you do.
Absolutely. So I think you can put it this way. When it comes to any organization, when it comes to revenue generation, you can look at it as that it involves a sales process of some sort. All right. And a sales process could include overall the strategy, what they're looking to accomplish on a large, big picture. It might include how well they maintain their clients, how well they get new business in the door, with resurrecting relationships, but also expanding or growing from within. I call that blooming where planted, that they've already got customers. How do they, eventually do a little bit? So that's that strategy piece. Then we also work on their systems and processes around after there is an opportunity of a sale, what it is that could be done prior to the call. What are some things that can be done after the call to learn more about that opportunity? And then we get more into the people we've got doing those roles. Are they farmers or hunters, to use that analogy? And then finally, when people open up their mouths to sell something, how do they sound? Do they have some proficiency in creating an environment of discovery? One of the biggest issues I see constantly is that what we see sales as, which is around trying to convince another human being. And I'd say I look at both of you, because you both know this better than anybody, that it's about creating that environment of discovery. How do we do that? Right? And I define that as the moment when your prospect repeats back to you something you help them to discover that they themselves may not have been aware of. So that's by asking those really key questions. I've heard this from Bruce many, many times about the caliber of the questions we ask. Are they thought evoking? So that's kind of the work that we do is in, and I guess you can use an analogy that we basically run a martial arts school for salespeople. Right? In addition to the sales leader work that we do, which is a whole other program, but on the sales development side, we have white belts that want to be yellow belts. We have green belts that want to be brown belts. And I actually work with black belts. I have a monthly session for very advanced salespeople where it's all role play. And it's not for the faint of heart, because some of them go up in a ball of flames. But it's a learning experience for them. So that's kind of the work that we're doing.
That's great. And you also
work a very long-winded answer.
But you also work with individual companies, correct?
Yeah, we do. We do. In myriad of industries and professions. I think last count was 70 different types of industries and professions we've worked in over the years that were in business. We know enough of each industry to be dangerous, but it's really about understanding and some really interesting business models. And you must be seeing this now of incredible business ideas that come up, and watching entrepreneurs build a company from the first day, ones that make mistakes and ones that really get it right. And we're seeing now by companies that are now getting funding, they're growing. They're, introducing IPOs now, but we've seen them in a period of, I have one client who in a matter of 6 years, they now have a sales team of over 40 people, and they built this incredible organization. So there's so much opportunity out there.
So as you talk about 70 different industries you've touched that you've worked with, I would guess that there's a common thread, a common humanity, a common people-centric thought that runs through all of them. Would you share?
It's such a great point. People say, well, our business is different. Right? Our business is different. And to which I say, okay, so how do you get revenue? Right? I mean, because that's the lifeblood of your business. So is it by subscription? Is it by monthly retainer? Is it by transactional that you have a sale and then there's another one coming down the road? Or is it a one and done type of thing? But there is some sort of a process where there's going to be some revenue generation that might involve some sales process. Some of it might be online. Some of might be that way as well. But they all follow a similar sets of challenges in developing business. And number one is, are they getting in front of enough opportunities on a regular, consistent basis, right? That to me is primo. And that most challenges we find is that they're just not, or haven't developed a system where they're getting in front of enough new opportunities on that regular, very, very consistent basis. That's almost methodical. And some of it might be creative avoidance. Some of it may be a prioritization. I don't have enough time to look for new business. But that's like the single most prevalent issue. Another issue that I see is that the opportunities take longer than they should to close. For some reason, there's stalls in the process. And maybe that's because there wasn't a deep dive to understand how a decision process might be done. They haven't really discussed around what budget looks like or time or resources to be there. And then there are other issues I see where people have to negotiate. They have to drop their pricing because they may be against a competitor. So there's all of these scenarios. So yes, we could say our business is different or your business is different, but there's a lot of similarities in terms when it comes to how that process is done.
People aren't different. I said, and people are people. The same objections, regardless if it's widget A or widget B or service C or D, you're going to come and face the same objections, framed or languaged a little differently, but they're the same objections, right? People are people.
Yep. Some of the work that I do is even what I call cognitive reframing. Like even the word objection. When people in sales, they hear the word objection, like they're already thinking, get on the boxing gloves. We're going in the ring, right? A little bit of rebuttal, right? I have a rebuttal for that response. And part of the cognitive reframing here that I work with teams is to say, all right, I want you to just take this word and write it down, right? Write down the word objection. Like we're in a court of law, objection, Your Honor. And I want you to cross that word out and never say it again because I want to give you another word to use. And they're like, what? The word is opinion. If somebody gives you their opinion, what's your response? Are the gloves going on? Are we looking for battle or rebuttal? No, what do people do when they hear an opinion? In other words, Elisa, if you said to me, Rob, I think your price is really high. That's not an objection to me. It's an opinion. So what would be my response to that? To say, listen, I appreciate you telling me. Could you help me understand a little bit more about when you say that, what's behind that? And that's going to cause you to explain a little bit more. And then I can start to ask questions from there. So that whole piece, I just wanted to sort of like how we reframe that, how we interpret that is just part of that mental game. You said before about people being the same. You're absolutely right. We all have an operating system. We all do. We all have mindset. We all have behavior, and we all have technique that we use, right? And the mindset is all about that mindset of abundance, which I know both of you have a plethora of, or the mindset of limitation, or Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, right? It's like, yeah, don't bother, it's never going to work, right? Instead, there's that mindset of there's so much business out there, right? And the question is, what am I going to do about that? Because again, I have my own system that I use for me to function. Again, I'm rambling now.
Now you're reiterating. Over the years, I've watched you and Bruce complement each other. You come to the same conclusions. You have similar ideology and thought process. You have different language sometimes, but Rob, you have your Magnificent Seven, and Bruce has always said, "Who's your poor?" Right? Yep. So it's the same philosophy, and it talks about. And so, for those of you who don't know what either of those things are, it's basically Bruce and Rob talk about having your core people, your core professionals that you are going to have your back and be there and get the job done and do the right thing. So when you make an introduction to your client, you never have to hesitate, right?
Absolutely.
And
so the Magnificent Seven, maybe you want to describe that a little bit so people saying, what's Magnificent Seven?
You can describe your Magnificent Seven.
Well, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right, so you, meaning the viewer who's watching this, you're the center of the universe here. All right, so it's all about you right now. So you put yourself right in the middle of this cog, this wheel, and around the wheel are 7 circles. And those 7 circles would contain types of businesses or industries or professions or consultants that you would love to, if you could have their list of clients, you'd love to have their list of clients because you're not competing with each other, but you are complementary. And that's where, if you use the words in real estate, for example, a real estate attorney, all right, an appraiser, a real estate agent, are examples of how they don't compete with each other, but they work in a complementary fashion. So that's what the Magnificent Seven process that we put together is all about, your bench. Now, it could be a Magnificent 14. It could also be a Magnificent 21, right? Because it doesn't mean that you're limited to just one trust and estates lawyer, because there are a lot of really, really wonderful trust and estates attorneys that I know and I've worked with. So that might be one. In our world, it may be a marketing consultant. In this case, it may be you guys, for example, as a strategic fit, right? That's, in other words, we help each other. And that's what that's all about. So we judge how well we've done in creating the list of 7 or 14 or 21, if you want to build your bench, and also how effective that relationship really is. And I'm all about blooming where planted. Do we go back to those who are thoughtful enough, thinking the 20-60-20 rule here, that 20% of people that we come into contact will never, ever, 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 ever refer us, right? Or endorse us. Then there's the 20% that love us. Love, 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 love. It's a love fest. And they're always thinking top of mind. And we all have that. And that 60% in the middle, they're just waiting for us to ask. Right? There's so much opportunity there. So that's one of the tools, is to create clarity and think about the networking opportunities too. Right? In other words, with you guys, when you run great meetings, is, do we walk in that room with a goal? Do we walk in that room with looking to create long-lasting relationships for mutual gain based on the opportunity that that person or company may be a very good strategic partner, which is, as we know, leads to so much opportunity when it comes to endorsements, referrals, recommendations, introductions, all of that. Again, I'm rambling.
No, it's great. And you gave a great description. It's perfect. As it relates to ARG, you're right on point. The work that Bruce and I do within ARG is exactly that, and helping people connect with the people that are their people, right? Knowing full well they're going to have a great relationship.
But it was interesting, as a caveat to that, is that the saying, if it's to be, it's up to me. In other words, that for some that really join the group and really work the group well, not for selfish purposes, but to help build opportunities within, that's really that 1 + 1 = 3 formula, is all about that abundance mindset and the go-giver process of that walking in saying, how can I help you? Who is it you would like to meet? How do we get to know each other a little bit more comfortable? And you guys know this more than anybody. It's really difficult for me to not know somebody. I first meet them for the first time. I don't really know that much about them yet. In this case, you guys endorse them, right? They wouldn't be in that room if they were not ethical. So in other words, I think that's one thing that I find very comforting, that the people that are there because they passed the bar, not bar exams. So that leads a little bit more to a more accelerated way of getting to know who they are. So I have a couple of calls that are scheduled from the meeting last week. I look forward to them and see how, what introductions I can do, or get to know them a little bit more. And not just about their business, but about their family, right? What was their world before they got into this business, if anything? When they're not working, what do they like to do for fun? What their goals, dreams, goals, and desires is what's going to create the essence of like a good baseline for one relationship, creating long-lasting relationships, mutual gain.
So you just said the words, right? And for us, that's exactly the point. We look to create an environment where you don't have to first filter the room to decide if these people are quality, if they're ethical, if they're integral, are they high-level professionals in their field of expertise? That's our job, right? So Bruce founded ARG, believe it or not, almost 30 years ago. And it has been by introduction and referral only for that entire time. We became partners almost 15 years ago. So it's a remarkable thing when you can facilitate and speed up time for professionals looking to connect to other professionals. Instead of it taking 6 months, of meetings and conversation and due diligence and trying to figure out if these people are right. And in our world, we work with very high level professionals who have high level clients who we all protect. We all protect our clients. We protect each other's clients. It's a I always feel like we provide a critically important role.
I think you do also. You also provide good guardrails for people to know about what is networking, right? And there are some that still walk the earth that really don't fully grasp the subtleties of what great networking is. And there have been horror stories that I can recall, not in your group, certainly not in yours, but others that I've been.
No, Rob, I believe that it's a greater percentage. I believe after doing this so long, it's an artwork. It's you have to really get into the psychology of it. All right. When people say to me, I don't get it. Okay. And I say to them, why should I? Explain to me about the conversation that you're having with people. Well, I spoke to Rob. It was a good conversation, but he didn't give me a referral. I said, well, Rob still doesn't know you. Okay. You've got to develop a relationship with somebody. But, so you don't have time for that. All right. So unfortunately, all right, there's a certain ability that you're not using. All right. And I find that most people, maybe 60% of the people that are in these groups, aside from us, okay, that are doing this networking thing, really have not put themselves in a position of become educated enough to do that. Now, you said earlier, you always talk about discovery. You and I always used to sit in the office and brainstorm together. And I used to say to you, before I open up a conversation with somebody, I want to do discovery with somebody. Right. So I want the potential client to talk to me. I don't want to talk. I want them to talk, right? And the more they talk, the more comfortable they are. And if I'm on my game, I'm going to learn a lot from this person, all right? And I'm going to look for the next question I'm going to ask, because I'm going to ask questions.
Right.
All right? And the bottom line is, if you don't do that, you're never going to become educated enough to be able to help that person. And my answer to somebody earlier this morning was, well, what have you given them? Mm-hmm. I didn't give them. It's about that wife. We've got to be able to look at the human side of people. And I think we lose that gift. All right. We're not looking at the human side. We're not doing the steps. And there's steps involved, starting with discovery and working it through. All right. And yes, there may not be immediate gratification, but in the end, it will be a long-term relationship, right? But we just don't have the patience.
I think your point's a great point, Bruce. It makes me think about certain members of your organization that I, again, having been in the group for a long time, that we see there are some people that just build this incredible network of very close relationships where they're not looking for that, brass ring all the time. Instead, they're very giving. And we know these people. We can all think of at least 10 people off the top of our heads right now that just understand the whole principle there about, of service to others, that it always finds its way back. It just does.
Absolutely.
It just finds its way back. Maybe not directly, but in some indirect way, it always does. That's just universal stuff.
It's always the same as that little girl in Willy Wonka's picture. Mm-hmm. I want it now. I want the Oompa Loompa now. Okay. Don't worry, I'll get it for you. But that's not reality. Okay. And it seems to be that psychology is what they bring into these groups. All right. And my answer to this person, I said, I would never give a referral to anybody I don't really know how good they are at what they do. Because I could tell you all the the terrible stories of how a professional lost their client because they must give the referral to somebody, all right, and they brought them in and they did a terrible job, all right, and you lose a client.
Yep.
You know? And I said,
Yep.
So we have to look at this, all right, as you're building something here. You're building your own network of professionals. Forget about what's going on in the room.
Yep.
You're building your own network of professionals or professionals who are problem solvers for clients who come to you with their issues and problems. That's my belief system anyway. All right. But sometimes it doesn't. That's okay.
15 years ago, serial networkers were still way too prevalent, way too many in every group. It's something we prided ourselves on, where we said no serial networkers here. We're not interested in working with folks that are here for a year. We have professionals that say out loud. It happened to me when I first met Bruce 15 years ago. They literally turned to me and said, well, I'll see what happens a year from now if you're still here. And I do a whole program on professional capital, how to bank it and how to spend it. And that's essentially what that professional was saying to me is, I'm not going to spend my professional capital with you if you're going to be gone in a year. That person happens to be with the organization 30 years, an original, and probably, I don't want to speak for them, but he has said as much over and over again. 100% of his relationships come from ARG. So it's fascinating. Yep. But yes, there are still people, not as many, I think, between Sandler and the culture of the current culture of things. People learn very quickly that commission breath and sell just doesn't work. And when you don't see the person in front of you and you're not interested to know that person, and I'm not saying you need to sit down and look at vacation pictures, but you need to have a sense of each other. You need to like, trust, and respect one another. There has to be a foundation, something to build on. Which, Bruce, is what you're saying in that call earlier. That person has no foundation and they've just got their hand out. Mm-hmm. And they think that, by the mere fact that they're here, it should be just, given. So,
and I think part of it also is the fact that we don't understand, these people don't understand that they are one of possibly 100 professionals that do the same work that they do. So what differentiates you from somebody I spoke to a week ago that somehow or another told me the same thing we're telling you right now? All right. So you got to be able, again, to communicate well with people. I think that one of the things that Rob does extremely well, all right, is try to explain to people that you've got to be able to know how to communicate. Yes, you're in the sales business. We all are selling. I don't care what you do. You're in the sales. You're a plumber, you're selling. Everybody's selling. All right. But how do you get that sale? Why would somebody decide you're the plumber I want? All right. And it's all about learning how to communicate correctly. All right. And just be able to let that person understand the value proposition that you're bringing to them, that you're not really interested in what your competition does. This is all about me, my relationship with you, client, customer, all right, whatever it is, it's all about us, all right? I could tell you it's a great challenge. Rob is up for the challenge, but it's a great challenge. All right.
When I was with the group last week, I threw some stats up on a board just to sort of give everybody an awareness. Because again, we're going to frame this out as growth-oriented people, right? People that want to be successful, who are candid and open with themselves and honest with themselves, that can confront brutal facts about areas to improve. In other words, they say to themselves, every day and everywhere I'm going to look to improve myself. And one of the things that came up was, what percentage of clients or customers will leave because of bad service? All right. And I threw the number up, and the group got it, right? It was anywhere from 60 to 96% of customers will leave because bad service is there, all right? And even though we talked about other things about probability of selling products or services to a prospective customer, it's like 5 to 20%. But the probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%. In other words, if we think about being strategic and being committed to our business, is do we have those processes in place? I'm doing a session tomorrow for sales leaders. And the session is, we did goal setting because at the beginning of the year, everybody wants to do goal setting, right? All right, we're going to set goals. We're going to set SMART goals for the year. And, I've got personal goals and health goals and social goals and business goals and financial goals, goals, right? And then FTI kicks in, which is failure to implement. Yeah, I couldn't get to the gym today, right? So the session I'm doing tomorrow is on accountability and motivation, right? In other words, how do we hold ourselves accountable to do the things we need to do, even though that may not make us comfortable? And do we understand the motivation that's out there? Carrot and stick, right? Which is motivation 1.0 versus an environment of intrinsic motivation. What motivates people to come to you, Bruce and Lisa, to say, hey, how can you help me be better as a networker? How can you help me better at developing business or getting better connections and getting more from the group? And you've had people come to you that wear their heart on their sleeve and saying, look, I'm looking for a little bit of help, rather than somebody who's got the wall up and doesn't have, or has too much of an ego and is not open to the feedback they need to hear. And I think that is all about that level of humility we're seeing right now. And even the leaders are going to have some tough questions that they're going to ask, that I'll be asking them tomorrow, to put them on the spot a little bit. In other words, you can blame it all day long on the sales team, but what's your role here as the leader? How are you holding them accountable? Not necessarily a carrot and stick thing, but how do you provide motivation for them to want to do better? So that's like a whole other side. I'm looking forward to the session. It's a good piece. So I think we're having a violent agreement is what we're doing.
A violent agreement.
We're having a violent agreement.
I really like the growth-oriented people comment because it couldn't be more true, right? If you're not growth-oriented, if you're happy with status quo, and you just meet who you meet, right? You'll close what you close, but then you get frustrated and you're angry that your business hasn't grown, right? So I think the key always lands with the responsibility we each take for our own actions and own, right? It doesn't matter the industry, and it doesn't matter what our skill set is. If you are brutally honest with yourself and you are accountable to yourself and you are honest with yourself, be honest that you're not in a growth mindset. Be honest that you're not, your activity level doesn't reflect the desire to grow, right? When it's not congruent and it doesn't line up, at the end of the day, we're each accountable to ourselves.
Right. So you guys know about above the line, below the line thinking, right? So you know the concept, right? So in other words, whenever if I'm working with a team, I'll put a picture of an oar.
Yeah.
So like an oar, row your boat, right? And I put a line and I put a bed right below it, right? So see an oar and a bed, and I'll ask the room, so what do you see? Well, I see an oar and I see a bed. Okay. So you may want to write this down, because the oar above that line that I put in the middle stands for ownership, accountability, and responsibility. In other words, Lisa, you just nailed that and just said, those are the three key pieces here. Are we owners or renters, right? An owner takes ownership of something. Hey, I'm not good at this. Accountable. Yeah, I need to have discipline to do the things I need to do. To give away 5 endorsements this week is an act of being accountable. And responsible is taking full ownership. Now, let's go to the bed, right? The bed is now below the line, and that one is blame, excuses, and denial. Denial is not a river in Egypt, right? It's denial. Like, it wasn't me. It was marketing. They screwed it up. If they got their act together, I could do more, right? So blame, excuses, and denial. So I worked with a team, private lenders, 50 salespeople. They loved this concept so much they put it in the back of their room. And anytime anybody complained, they would call each other out and say, hey, Sam, you just went below the line. And I taught them to say, all right, if you find somebody going below the line, what is something they could say that would bring them back above the line again, right? Because they could rescue themselves if they can think about a way that they could do that, right? For example, that that prospect was an idiot, right? That's below the line stuff. They were an idiot, right? And we have a rule: there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople, right? So in other words, what statement could you make and take ownership for? Might sound like, I probably rushed the call a little bit. Maybe I could slow down and set better expectations up front. Now that's taking ownership. And I think that's part of the culture here that we're seeing this year and beyond. Companies that are looking to grow and increase sales are looking at everywhere they can to look at people and their own mindset limitations. Again, going back to Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, is do they have blame, excuses, and denial, or do they take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for their actions?
Rob, I could talk to you for hours and hours.
Well, I could do the same. So
I know. It's such a pleasure.
Certainly can. Okay.
It is a pleasure, and I want to be respectful of your time and invite you back on any subject you want to talk about, because it's all really valuable, really important.
Always invite me back. You've got a long list of people that are qualified to sit here and give you pearls of knowledge and wisdom from their own respective businesses and professions. When you think of the caliber of people in the organization, there's a lot of talent collectively, thousands of years of hard work and information that has been gathered by these people who worked hard to do it. So this is a great format for everybody to learn a little bit more about each other, and also as a helpful resource. Accountants Resource Group. It's your marketing.
You're so good. I do want to thank you again for spending time with us and sharing some of your brilliance and expertise.
Thank you. And I do want to thank you, Lisa, for your leadership, and Bruce for your vision. Because when you think about how many years you've done this, and you could say, well, I've been doing this 1 year 15 or 1 year 30 times. You haven't. You've gotten better and better with a high caliber of people in the group. So cheers to both of you.
Thank you. So you'll be able to find all of Rob's information in the post. Look for that. You can always reach out to us if you can't find him for whatever reason. But Rob, thank you again.
You're very welcome.